Hello and welcome to the Womb-Centered Healing Podcast. I'm Sama Morningstar, and I have Tiffany Taft with me, Dr. Tiffany Taft, I should say. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tiffany. I would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit more, sharing about your work. Let us know, and what womb-centered healing means to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Tiffany Taft, and I am an integrative health and wellness therapist. By that, I mean I include several different modes of healing from the healing arts to include massage, yoga, aromatherapy, reflexology. I'm also a birth and postpartum doula and a childbirth educator. And I utilize all of those or components of each of those services to customize services for my clients. I am currently located in the Northern Virginia area, and so I am planning actually to expand because a lot of my services don't require me to be at one specific location. And so I am looking to connect with like-minded practitioners that are my focus moving forward will be more so maternal fetal health, and that's really where I'm headed with my services and main focus. And so I started out in the healing arts in 2004. Although I have been traditionally medically trained for well over 20 plus years. And so my practice really is centered around East meets West because I believe in evidence-based medicine, but I also believe that there's a holistic way to take care and heal the body. What does womb-centered healing mean to me? Well, for me, the womb is a sacred place. Especially for women, we are a portal. So we receive. And so our ability to protect our womb and make sure that it is in the most optimal and healed state, we must constantly protect our space and connect ourselves with things that are truly in alignment and intentful for what is for our greater good.
Wow. So I'm imagining that in your holistic healing practice that you do quite a bit of education potentially around that, the womb being a sacred space, and how do we bring it to optimum health and well-being, and how that affects our whole health and well-being. As a womb-centered healing practitioner myself, I feel like the womb is at the center of our whole overall holistic wellness, and that if our womb is ailing in any way, for example, common womb ailments that many people accept as normal, like painful menstruation or difficulty conceiving, or even more severe things like endometriosis, or the list goes on, that that those are a sign of our overall health and well-being needing attention, which is somewhat contrary to what a lot of more medically oriented practitioners, which a lot of medical research, which I'm sure you learned in your training, was based on the male norm, the masculine body as the norm, right? And just didn't even really include the feminine body. So that's the womb is sort of an afterthought or something added on later, as opposed to what it really is, which is, guess what? The source of all life, right? Where we all started. So I wonder, could you share a little bit about how you, some of the key points that you bring when you're working with a new healing client, that these ideas might be new to, and that those old ideas of the womb being something to be ignored are still sort of there in the person.
Yeah. So I do have I'll say a mixed client base. So I do see male clients as well, but more so from the perspective of chronic pain and rehab. That's in general for everybody, right? So I am focused on their physical healing, not only their physical healing, I should say, but also mind and spirit. And so from those conversations, I really kind of in my consultation or my intake, really try to understand why is it that they have selected massage or yoga practice? What are they looking to obtain from that? And how best can I help serve for the physical pain for which they present to my table for? So it really just depends on, what questions and responses I get from those questions that the clients have. For my female clients, specifically my prenatal clients or my postpartum clients, the questions are can go a little bit more deep, right? Because it's a more higher feminine connection. They are birthing or have birthed a whole other person or people if it was multiples. And so usually in that prenatal visit, I'm asking them, what is the birth story that you wish to tell for you and your baby? And how do you see that playing out? What are the things that we need to plan for to make sure that I can be the best advocate for that mom? Because that's what I am as a doula. I don't replace her family or her partner or her husband. I am simply an extension of them. And so my questions and my intent are to be there to serve her and make sure that we're all on the same page when the day of the baby's birthday is it's time, it's go time. So I am there to be her mind, body, spirit to help her keep focused because she may be in for the long haul with this birth, or it could be short-lived, but whatever it is, it's a journey and it's her journey. And I want to make sure she has the best experience possible. Mm-hmm. For some women, they may have had the experience of a sexual trauma or just a sexual assault. And either one of those could have a completely different outcome in terms of what her journey or her personal birth story may be. And so being sensitive and mindful of that situation and kind of preparing her, I guess, emotionally and mentally as much as possible before it's time to give birth.
Right. And so do you mostly attend births? I mean, I imagine you attend births anywhere that the mother ends up having her birth. I imagine you've attended home births, hospital births, all different kinds of birth scenarios, whether planned that way or evolving in wherever it landed. Mm-hmm. I'm curious specifically for those moms who do have a history of sexual abuse or assault, what specific preparations or jobs do you take on to ensure, say, if that mom is being exposed to health practitioners, medical providers, for example, that are new or unfamiliar to her, if the birth plan had to change or whatever, I wonder if you could give some examples of how you advocate for that, for the sensitivity of those moms to be tended to in as we know, birth can be quite an unpredictable story that unfolds.
Yeah. So as much as possible, the prep is done ahead of time. And again, depending on where she is in her healing journey, because some women, the trauma has happened, but they've never really openly discussed it. And so I use the opportunity, not only in the intake, but as we progress through her pregnancy, to not keep reminding her or having her relive it, but ensuring that she is hopefully going to talk to a professional that's going to be able to help her start to work on the parts that she needs to heal for herself. Mm-hmm. I am of the belief if she's already pregnant but has not yet healed from that trauma, that the baby is now marinating in that sacred, scared, frustrated, angry. It's not as peaceful of a place as it should be because mom is not healed. And so we honor where she is, and we try to get her resources if necessary, in the form of psychologists or psychiatrists. We're also working with her OB doctor or her midwife, who may or may not be aware of the situation, but that's something that we have the conversation together if she likes. If we're not together, I definitely encourage her to have that conversation. This is not a time for mom to be hiding behind the shame. Everyone needs to be aware.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Beautiful. And so I've heard many stories from other doulas, and even I even was in contact with someone who was a lawyer and became a lawyer doula, like that was keenly aware of mothers' legal rights in the medical system, especially around body sovereignty and express permission or not giving permission for various treatments, for boundaries around the body, and requests for medical practitioners being respectful of the female body, when it's very easy, of the birthing woman's body, when it's very easy for those practitioners to get into a very mechanical, this is our procedure, we're just going to come in and do this. Have you found yourself as a doula with those types of sensitive moms needing to intervene or have discussions with the new nurse on the ward that you haven't met yet, or who is coming at this in an insensitive way, to take them out in the hall and say, hold on here, this is what my client's rights are, and this is what she's requested and what she needs to have a healthy birth. I'm curious to hear if you've had some circumstances like that you've dealt with.
Fortunately, no, not yet. I have not. Probably the extent to that is like you said, meeting the new nurse, or being at a hospital where the doula is not well received in the way. So it's just a conversation to say, which is another reason why, if I'm co-located where mom is, I ask if I could potentially meet her OB or her midwife ahead of time and actually visit the hospital or the birthing center where she's going to be. So it's not the very first time on that day when everyone is seeing me or seeing my face. Now, having said that, nursing staff changes on shifts, right? So I'm not going to be able to meet every nurse, but at least the conversation has been had with the two most important people that are going to be in the room, whether it's her OB or that midway.
Beautiful. And so you come prepared with, might need to have a conversation before the care even begins, as we're in the early process. And you come in and you say, okay, who's the nurse? Who's going to be, when's the shift change? When am I going to look for a new nurse? And so it sounds like you are heightened to the whole situation, your awareness, and you catch it before it turns into an issue.
Yeah, and I usually just try to walk in and introduce myself, and I'm not, pushy or aggressive about it, but I do want to let them know, because I am going to be there while she's birthing. So short of them actually physically kicking me out of the hospital, everyone on that shift, I asked the nurse that I speak to, please let them know, that I'm here birthing with her. I'm her coach also. So fortunately, I haven't really had any issues. And I think part of it helps that I am used to working in a hospital and setting. So I'm a bit more comfortable, and I kind of know when and how to navigate some of those systems. But there are facilities that we are not welcome.
Interesting. You're in the way. You're even in the way.
It's getting better. It really is. But there's a lot of work still to be done around the education of what our role is and how helpful we really are to that mom and those families.
Are there any kinds of projects that you know of of educating medical staff about doulas?
Not personally, no, but I have actually thought about incorporating some of that into some of my future projects,
Mm-hmm.
because, specifically, so I'm currently on the East Coast, but up north, and I'm planning to migrate at some point south. And so I really don't know, what is the mentality there? Do they even know, or have they even heard about what a doula is?
Mm-hmm.
How traditional are they in that birthing experience? And so some of that is going to be new education for me, and I'm hoping, to be able to put together programs that will, or a center even, that piece of the puzzle is a part of the education of the community as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And so, from that, I would hope to invite, the local hospitals or the birthing centers, the midwives, all of that. So it's a collaborative effort.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Right? And not just, me popping up at their hospital or their birthing center one day, or some random, person finding me as a doula. They know what I'm about, but we go to have the conversation, and now everything stops because they're like, well, who is this person?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like your dreams of this collaborative educational process around doulas and medical staff, it sounds very similar to one that I've dreamed of, having gone to various gynecological practitioners with varying, usually fairly low awareness of the quality of touch. That as massage therapists, you're one, I'm one, is a highly developed, keen sense of the effect that your touch has on a person's body, which very few medical practitioners that are touching bodies have had any training on. So one of my dreams is to have a compassionate touch for medical practitioners courses to offer, because especially for gynecological, I've had gynecological visits where I feel like the person is just trying to get in and out there as quickly as possible and get it over with because it's really unpleasant to them.
Yeah.
Another
most intimate moment of a woman's life.
And here we're being treated that way, instead of the honoring of this sacred portal of life that it could be, right? And so I wonder I'm curious as to what was your original medical training and what your process was of saying, you know what, I need to move in this more holistic direction in your work.
Yeah. So I come from a nursing background. And so I have worked OBGYN floors from a clinical perspective there. But over the years, I think when I started out in massage therapy, and the aromatherapy and Reiki, the energy work, that I really found, and then for me personally, I guess, it just came to a point where I said there has to be a better way to handle the body with love and care and allow it to heal itself without constantly dumping medication into it and or surgery to fix stuff. A lot of the stuff that we have could be prevented with the knowledge, right? We're hard on the body, and we feel like there's a pill or surgery, a knife that can fix everything. And some things just shouldn't even ever occur if we just take care of the body. So be more preventative with our care instead of reactive when just waiting for it to happen. So I even thought about osteopathic medicine, because that doctor actually is that holistic doctor. They're medically trained, but they at all costs try to heal that body as holistically first, without the drugs and the surgery where possible.
Yeah, or even a naturopathic doctorate that brings in all of these ancient practices. Oftentimes, massage therapy predates all modern medicine. And in fact, in ancient China, the first medical practitioners that people went to for healing were touch therapists. They would put their hand on the hara, which is where the womb is, and could diagnose and treat any illness in the body just by placing the hand on the hara.
Yeah.
And so that's the origin of massage therapy, was the ancient medical medicine people. And so reweaving these holistic methods into our reality seems to be the work of the times, as far as overall health and well-being for our species and for the planet. Wonderful. And so what was the first thing you started to study from being a nurse and saying there's got to be a better way? What did you start to look into first?
I think it really just was understanding the nursing environment as a whole. So I don't actually have my nursing degree. I got my nursing experience from the military. So that is something that now, as I've progressed through my journey, because I thought about osteopathic school, and I said, oh, I don't know. I want to do all that, but with this stage in my life, I don't know if I want to commit to that level of education in terms of time. I absolutely love school and medicine overall. But at this point in my journey, I'm looking for ways I can be most impactful now without spending that time in school and not being able to serve my community. So I probably will be taking that shorter route and investigating nursing school, and specifically either midwifery or a nurse practitioner program. It's a shorter route, but it still allows me to do all of the things that I foresee myself doing in terms of my next level programs and projects I'm looking to deliver.
Sure.
So, yeah, I am a PhD doctor, so I'm focused on, while I have done the hands-on clinical piece, I'm really now into asking the questions, why? And understanding the research and how I can make a difference there, especially from a perspective of education, because there's so many people that just don't have the correct information or any information at all.
Wow. So what did you get your PhD in? What was your thesis?
Not in health and wellness.
Oh, no. What was your thesis about?
So I did manage to weave the healthcare piece in there. So I am a cybersecurity professional in terms of my degree, but I did from a lens of leadership in the healthcare environment. So how to protect the resources, and what types of leaders would you typically find in the healthcare environment when you add on the top of that cybersecurity, which we know can be a very costly expense, especially in healthcare. And that's the one area where you cannot afford your information to be compromised. So much more to lose. And not just your information, but the expenses, right? So if they get into the actual assets of the hospital, it doesn't take very long to bring down a whole entire system.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So you did some very fascinating research around all that. And, the ease at which, a big organization like that could be compromised in that way is pretty shocking, I bet. But it makes sense because, the people that are tending to this and that, often those organizations are so disconnected, right? It's so specialized, this specialist and that specialist, with no real weaving together or holistic system model, right? It's more of this other model that leaves all these gaps and loopholes for people to get in and wreak havoc. So, wow, fascinating combination of skills.
I know, totally unrelated to the health and wellness piece, but There is a psychology behind, the type of person that does that type of work, and specifically in the healthcare space. So I made it work, and I enjoy that part of my life too. But that is not my purpose, and what really lights, what I really enjoy doing, and where I find myself being in service. So I've spent well over 15 plus years in the holistic space, um, with my formalized education, but also with continuing education, because I always want to be in the know of like what's the latest and greatest, kind of where the trends are going. But then also, how can I be different? Because I don't want to be just another massage therapist, or just another yoga instructor, or just another doula. I want to be different and stand out. And so, in order to do that, I need to understand what that landscape looks like, so that I can brand myself different.
And what makes your services unique as a practitioner?
Yeah. So I think right now, honestly, I tell my students all the time that I can teach you technique, but I can't teach you touch. You either have it or you don't. And so for me, I think early on, I have a Native American grandmother. So I think early on, those different ceremonies and the touch, just the simple foot rubs or the scalp rubs, they felt very natural to me. And, that in combination with putting some formalized, this is the way you actually do the technique, felt very comfortable for me. And so for me, I think what makes me different is now that I have a toolkit or toolbox with multiple tools in it. And so, where there are therapists that only do massage, or only do yoga, or only do energy work. That's great. And people say, well, you're all over the place. No, not really, because I customize the session. So the client that comes to me, I have enough information from several different pieces of the healing arts to support what I'd say 9 out of 10 of those potential clients are going to need. There may be that one-off person that I'm like, I don't do that service. But that's few and far between for me. And so I love that I have all of that information and knowledge, and that I'm able to, even if I don't have to put my hands on anyone in terms of the healing work, that I'm able to share information. And I know the different types of practitioners to say, well, maybe you need to go see this kind of person. And I can do that from the medical perspective, or I can do it from the holistic perspective.
Beautiful. Yeah, so you really are someone who's weaving together all of these different methods of care, all the different ways that your clients or people in the community could get support with their health and healing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Because it really is for me about, I don't care if everybody comes to me or not. There's someone, a practitioner for everyone. So if you have their information, you got to find the right practitioner for you. And so if I'm that person, outstanding. But if I'm not, here's some other resources. I just want to be able to serve the community and meet the need wherever they are.
Now, I imagine that part of your discovery of holistic wellness practices was a personal journey, that you may have had some of your own growth or healing that wasn't met in the medical field in some way. And I'd love to hear about that your exploration. What were some of the practitioners and healing modalities that helped you the most, or practices that you've adopted as your self-healing practice?
Yeah. So 2 very distinct things stand out for me. From the perspective of mothering and the womb, I had 2 very large fibroids that I had over just over 7 years, and I tried several different traditional Western medicine techniques as well as holistic techniques. And unfortunately for me and the type of fibroid that I had, they just were non-responsive to the traditional methods. And with the alternatives, they responded a little bit, but not fast enough, because unfortunately at the point of which I started engaging in the alternatives, my body physically was at the point of, you got to do something. It was a life or death situation.
Oh, wow.
So the fibroids I had before I was pregnant and with my second child, and my doctor told me, he said, if you're going to get pregnant, you need to do it on purpose, and you're going to be a complicated pregnancy. And as soon as you deliver, you're going to have a hysterectomy. And so, unfortunately, the pregnancy, it was not planned. And so I found myself in a situation where the fibroids essentially outpaced the growth of my baby and essentially suffocated. And so that pregnancy ended up in a miscarriage, and so I lost the baby. So that really, put me on a different trajectory of understanding how strong this body is, and all of the things it does to protect us for a very long time before we get that boulder and it says, sit down somewhere, I'm done. And so there were little signs along the way that I just didn't pay attention to, that now when my body says something or does something, I'm listening and I'm more in tune to that. So for me now, I have a strong meditation practice, and I really do practice self-care. I'm very protective of the people I allow in my circle, and I'm intentional about the work that I do, and the people that I'm around, because energy is everything to me. And so I want to make sure that I'm always putting myself in the most healthy situation as possible. And so I'm getting better. I haven't perfected it, but it's certainly leaps and bounds better than it was, 10 years ago. My second holistic, I guess, event would have been around my diet, nutrition. So again, part of the fibroids was adjusting my diet. And I went vegan for about a year and noticed like tremendous changes in my body. And so I'm not vegan right now, and I can tell the difference. Again, my body was so inflamed, and there were a lot of different things physically happening to my body as a result of the diet. And very, quickly for me, I just stopped everything and I was strictly vegan, and that worked for me. Now, having said that, I'm from the South, so I eat, but I also try to make sure that I'm exercising and doing other things that keep me well balanced. And so I don't deprive myself of things, but I'm more mindful about the things that I eat and the things that I do.
Beautiful. So I had a question around the first scenario that you were talking about, but now it's with the fibroids, right? The first part of what you were sharing about. Oh yeah, it seems to me like that possibly both of these explorations with listening to what your body is asking for sooner before it turns into a crisis, say like the one that you had with the miscarriage and not being able to carry to term. It seems like that growing awareness in you corresponds with your shift from, like you said, getting a PhD in something that wasn't really your life calling, to now listening more deeply to what is your life calling, what are you passionate about, what is that inner guidance telling you to create, which is it's very similar to, what does our womb say? What does our body say? How are we needing to be nourished? What are we meant to be creating? So I'm curious to hear you share a little bit about that, how you see that weaving together, your discovery and nurturing of your calling and passion alongside this discovery and nurturing of a new way of being with your body and your health.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. The PhD in the discipline for which I obtained, while I was doing it, more than halfway through the program, I'm like, why are you doing this? But I am also that person that once I started, I'm committed to it. I did see a benefit in it, and I do love that work. It's not something that I saw being my forever and something I wanted to do every day and really being able to contribute back to society. It was a means for me to make money. And yes, I can make a difference in that space too, but that's not where my joy comes from. And so I started to, have some physical manifestations from the stress of that type of work on my body that wasn't serving me. And so I finished my program, and I'm very proud that I finished my program. And if I could do another program in the holistic disciplines, I certainly would. But I don't need to do that piece to do the work that I do now. I should have been a nurse or a doctor over 20 years ago, but that's not how my journey was meant to be. So I think now I'm very clear that yes, I want to be an osteopath, but I'm a woman of a certain age, and so I don't want to spend another 10 years in school and essentially stop the momentum I have in the work that I'm doing. Right? So nursing works for me. I will do that, as I mentioned, and then the next step over that would be to be a practitioner or a midwife and still be able to do the work.
And so you've seen, as this shift is happening, at the same time, it sounds like there's this shift in your relationship with your health.
Yes.
And do you see that going hand in hand with a lot of your clients who are having big reorganizings of how they're looking at their purpose in life at the same time that they're having a big reorganization of how they address their health and their well-being?
Yeah. What I've seen quite a bit, honestly, people don't have real conversations with themselves, right? They wait for things to completely fall apart or get to a place and they're in a crisis situation. Sometimes when I would say more often than not, by the time the client makes it to me and we're having that discussion, I'm asking some questions that I'm thinking they probably have already played in their head, and they're looking at me like, well, that's a really good question. And I'm thinking, how have you been able to maintain this level of stress or dysfunction as long as you have? It's no wonder that your body hurts or that you have signs and symptoms of other things going on. So that's why I said the education piece for me is important. It's just a conversation. Whether I actually do anything with them or not, if I can get people to start to think and believe that there's more interaction that they need to have with their body and their cells, there's an awareness that needs to be had. And we all walk around like life is happening and we're not fully engaged. It's just happening.
Right. And that comes from, a lot of how we're brought up and what we're taught, especially in public school, which is there's this set of rules that you're supposed to live by that someone else has determined, and that you're just supposed to go along and play by the rules and stay out of trouble, right? And so people just sort of fall into that. So, a lot of people do just fall into that and don't think that there's any way out of it, even though that set of rules is so unhealthy for us. Just doing that is terribly unhealthy for human beings. The collective, rule book, it does not consider, especially women's bodies. And it doesn't really consider men's bodies either. I mean, men's health issues are sometimes more severe and debilitating than women's.
Yes.
And so part of that, getting free of that set of rules someone else made and getting in touch with how we actually want to live our lives and take responsibility for that ourselves can be very scary, because if you've leaned on this scaffolding
Yes.
in order to be safe and stay out of trouble, and the whole programming to keep you there is telling you you're going to be in terrible trouble or in terrible danger if you step out of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It breeds a distrust in our own inner guidance and teaches us to trust in what someone else, some authority is telling us, right? With some degree or some position of power. And so finding our own inner location of our inner power and our inner responsibility and ability to listen to our own inner guidance seems really central to this learning process. And it's not an easy thing as a practitioner to point someone to that without having them decide that we're the new authority, right? Have you ever run into that? And I wonder how you deal with that.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that, because I was recently, just before Christmas, I was recently nominated top doc for integrated health and wellness in my area.
Wow.
And so I've, but before that, I've had clients, or just in general, talking to people, they said, oh, I heard you do XYZ, or you have experience in such and such. And so I get certain questions. From the perspective, almost it felt like I was a Bible resource of information for them. And so, like I said, whether that turns into a client for me or not, I'm about giving the information out because I want people to be well and live a full life that's more than just about doing stuff that really has no meaning at the end of the day. What do you want people to say about you? And so my ability to help them create those types of long-term stories is important to me. And so my word is inner fitness. Is we look great on the outside when we put this package together, but a lot of us are still really messed up inside. And so you can clean it all up, but if you're still messy inside, what good are you really to the community? And so we've got to do the work and get ourselves in order so that we look good on the inside and feel good on the inside. And that just naturally comes out on the outside. So yeah, I get those questions that say, I kind of feel like they think I'm a point of authority, and that feels great, which makes me, have to stay up on my game too. I gotta be in the research and in the know and understand, like I said before, where the trends are going, so that I'm giving the most accurate information I can.
Beautiful. And it sounds like you hold yourself as an informational resource. And when it comes down to working with people, that you're going to point them to their inner resources and just nourish those inner resources so that they have a freedom of what they're choosing still. You're not necessarily telling them what they have to do, but you're showing them what some of their options are that makes a bigger playing field than they might have seen before.
Yes.
Yeah, I find that to be really important to me, because I've had the experience of yoga teachers, for example, or healing practitioners that are even spiritual teachers that really get into that sense of authority. And you say it does feel good when someone validates the work that you're bringing. So that can be a dangerous thing, because if I'm just replacing the authority that someone was dependent on before with, what's the difference? Am I really serving my purpose,
Right.
Helping people to be liberated from that system and find their inner locus of power, right?
Yeah.
Inner power. I'm all about inner power. And so it's a big question I feel. And so it sounds like this informational resource is a big part of steering clear of that and being up to date with the information that's available. Awesome.
Yes.
Wonderful. So do you have a way for people to get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more about your work?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So my website is www.sacredsoulwellness.org.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow me on Instagram at Sacred Soul Wellness, or on Facebook at that's Dr. Tiffany Taft, the number 1. And that's Dr. Tiffany Taft, the number 1 on Facebook.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you so much once again. And I'd like to end with holding a vision for all of us finding that inner resource that's true to our purpose and to what we're meant to be giving and serving, how we're meant to be serving. From that inner knowing, free of any intense outer influences that might not be aligned with that, and supported by community and practitioners and resources that are aligned with that and that do nourish that and support that. So holding that vision with you, for me, with me, together. So anything you would like to add about that in general?
Thank you so much for that. And like I said, again, it's all about education, and the more that, we can share the knowledge that we have and embrace the community, I think the better off we all will be. We're all on a journey. We don't have it perfected, but we learn together and we do better together.
Beautiful. We do better together. All right. Thank you so much. And that's all for now here on the Womb Centered Healing Podcast. Until next time.